So after leaving the gang,
Mm-hmm.
you essentially pledged a vow of nonviolence.
I did.
And that basically means that you're no longer going to be attacking anyone, you're no longer going to try to kill anyone, and so forth. And I guess there was a situation with the Mexican Mafia, a hitman that actually attacked you in 2015.
Yes.
So what happened there?
Well, unfortunately, I let him get behind me. But I'd worked a double shift, and I had a fella that was going to the parole board the next morning, and he'd asked for my help. So I was sitting on a bench with him, going over the paperwork, and the assailant came from behind me, did a roundhouse kick, hit me in the face, took me head over heels over the back of the bench. I went semi-unconscious, but he had a box cutter, and he reached in, grabbed my hair, reached in to cut my throat. I couldn't see, but I could still hear. And so in feeling his movements, he reached in to cut my throat at the windpipe and jugular, and I was able to block it. And he cut my ear in half instead. And second time in, he kind of choked up on my hair and reached in again. And I blocked it again, and he caught the back of my throat. He missed the anterior artery by about 1 centimeter. And then the third time I got my sight back, so I took the weapon away from him and waited for staff to respond after I took the weapon away from him, as opposed to use it on. I mean, in truth, I thought about breaking his neck, but didn't, and just simply took the weapon away and waited for staff to arrive.
Okay. And by 2019, after being up for parole, I guess, 18 times?
Yes.
They finally granted you parole.
They did.
And was that situation where you were attacked and you end up not retaliating, was that part of the decision for them to actually grant you parole?
I think so. I mean, that's coupled with the fact that at the time that was going on, my wife and I had started a group called Live, Learn, and Prosper in the prison. And so we were running groups every day of individuals. It was the influence that my actions had upon those groups, I think, is what the board and the administrators looked at. In other words, I was practicing what I was preaching to them. I was talking to other gang dropouts and other individuals and telling them that there were other methods available to them other than violence. And so in this one particular instance, that held true. And that example had a huge impact on the population. I guess their thinking was that if I could take a knife away from somebody and not use it on him, after he'd just cut my ear off and my throat, cut my throat, that they too could seek alternatives. Oftentimes people confuse a vow of nonviolence with pacifism. I'm not a pacifist. I want to make that clear. But my vow of nonviolence remains in place.
Well, at the time, Governor Gavin Newsom could have actually stepped in and reversed the decision.
Yes, he could have.
But he actually took no action and allowed you to get paroled.
He did.
One of the things to note was around that time, there was another guy named Rene Enriquez, who was, I guess, more or less your counterpart in the Mexican Mafia, who ended up dropping out and cooperating with the police. He was actually granted parole several times, but Newsom would come in and actually deny it every time.
Yes.
Why do you think that was?
I think it had primarily had to do with Boxer's history. He wrote the book, I think it was called The Black Hand, and, he provided information, testimony, and the like. But one of the things that he didn't reveal was that one of his crimes was statutory rape. And whenever you have a crime against a woman, particularly, and a sex crime at that, I think that's something that's looked on. I think actually that our society and those who administer to our society will accept violence, although rape is violence. But like knife fights and being shot and shootings and the like that happen in prison, as opposed to a crime against a child or a crime against a woman. And I happen to agree with that.